Hi, I'm Jonathan M0JSX, and we are back at the car because there's been some updates which I think you're going to be happy about. A number of people commented in my last video on the car about how I had done things not necessarily in the correct way. So today, hopefully, I've addressed those concerns. We're going to start off in the engine bay and the battery. Now, previously, in the last video, you saw that I had wired a wire around the firewall and through this bit of wing here. I have corrected that, so you probably won't be able to see, but down there, the DC cable, it's brand new DC cable. Thank you to Martin Lynch & Sons for supplying that. It's going through the grommet at the back there. That was a pain in the backside to install, but it is now properly terminated. I've also uprated this DC cable, so previously it was a 30 amp cable. This is now a 40 amp cable, just because plans for the future might mean I want to draw a tiny bit more current, but we'll see. So that's the battery now all coming through nicely through the firewall into the main cabin, I suppose. Let's move around because there's more developments, and please excuse, I've literally just done this, so that's all of the old DC cable that I've pulled out. If we could head up here, so we can see where the DC cable is coming through the grommet. I've also installed a secondary power feed from the fuse box. So this is one of those splitters where you put two fuses in here. One is for whichever fuse was you've hijacked, and the second is for this extra feed. So I have got this extra feed in, which I'm then bringing up here to an override switch, and the idea of this is for APRS. So I've tapped it off on the headlight fuse because that is a feed that only comes on with ignition. So I now have the APRS tracker only at the moment. We're still working on the radio, but tracker, or the tiny track, being powered on when the car gets switched on with the ignition, rather than running it directly off the battery and flattening the battery. So it only comes on with ignition, and then I've got the override switch so that even when the ignition is on, I can override it and turn it off if I want to. And then both DC cables, so the really big 40 amp plus this smaller sort of 25 amp, go all the way through the cabin underneath this skirting. To be honest, I've done such a good job, you can't see it. So this is all obviously up behind the glove box as well. Next, we'll move to the rear of the car. So just a couple of things at the rear of the car. Obviously the DC, the chunky DC 40 amp cable comes round. It comes around the front of the battery and connects here. I do need to install an additional fuse, and this is fused up at the battery end. I do need to install another fuse at the radio end just for belt and braces, but otherwise it should be fine. And then this is the feed that comes through from the fuse box. It's not the best in the world, it could be better, but it is here onto power poles, and it's feeding up onto this tiny track, and then it's still, at the moment it's still on this TID radio H3. Again, thinking about the future and what I'd like to put in there in its place. Possibly something like a Yaesu FT1500 would be a really good option. I've done a video on those before, somewhere up there. And that would be a really good, simple solution with both the tiny track and then the radio powered from the fuse box. Now, reason I chose 40 amp cable rather than 30 amp was thinking in the future I might want to do HF mobile and still run possibly the 8900 or something else. So by using the 40 amp cable, I've got the option in order to do that and still got plenty of current capacity on that wire. We'll see. It might never happen, but if it does, then I'm already prepared for that. Other thing to talk about are the antennas. So previously you would have seen that I had the blue tack here coming down, and then I blue tacked it up here. In fact, there's a bit of remaining blue tack there. That's now gone, mostly because I was getting a bit of water ingress inside the car. I'm still getting a little bit, but I think that's the seals of the car itself. So instead I have I removed the light clusters and have run the coax through the back of the light cluster, and it comes out just at the bottom and then in up that way. That's working nicely so far. Next kind of project to do would be to again remove the light cluster and see if I can remove the connector. When you remove these light clusters, there's like a connector which is flush mounted onto the bodywork of the car, the metalwork of the car. So my ultimate goal is to remove that connector, feed the coax through that hole, and maybe open up that hole slightly, and then get it back in, so I could then bring the coax inside the vehicle within the light cluster rather than through the seal. That may never happen. This does work, and certainly I've got plenty of drip looping at the bottom, so that I'm not concerned about any kind of water ingress from the coax because it's all nicely done. But it's all coming together, and then obviously it's still just the two antennas on the top as we've previously discussed. Now, someone did email me, and apologies, I've forgotten your name, regarding antennas, and they said they were surprised that I've done this, given the fact that half the antenna is kind of below the height of the car. That's for two-ish good reasons. The first one is directionality you mentioned in your email. Yes, obviously there is going to be slight directionality when it comes to these antennas and not being omnidirectional because of the bodywork of the car. That's absolutely fair. That's absolutely a correct shout. However, I don't care. They seem to work pretty fine anyway. There's no real issues that I've noticed in terms of that. I'm going to open up the repeaters that I expect to be able to open up. Having QSOs, you're absolutely perfectly fine. The APRS system works, as does the main VHF UHF system. So I'm not concerned about directionality. Secondly, with the height of the longest antenna, which is this one, it's still under 2 meters. So that is about my height, about 1.8 meters. The advantage of that, of course, is that I can drive this vehicle into a multi-storey car park without having to be concerned about the height of my antennas and them getting twanged, the technical term, as I drive in. It's a compromise. Obviously, everything is always a compromise. Yes, I possibly could have mounted them higher up. I could have possibly mounted them here on this bit of metalwork. But then, I'm looking at a meter of, let's say the car is on 1.4 meters, let's just say at that point. And then I'm looking at another meter on top. That's then 2.4 meters up. That's then definitely not fitting into a multi-storey car park. So it was a compromise to put them down lower. They do work. They certainly work better than a handheld inside the car does. So I'm happy with how that's done. You also mentioned in your email about using glass mount antennas on these points here. Firstly, I've used a glass mount antenna in the past. Now, admittedly, it wasn't one of the panorama ones, but it was one that was supposedly dual band. I could never get it to tune on 2 bands. I could get it to tune on one or other. So in the situation that I had on that car, it was a car I had probably about 10 years ago. I ended up using it just on 2 meters and just on APRS. It worked fine for that, but then in my experience, as I say, it wasn't one of the panorama antennas. It was a third-party Chinese one. Yeah, it was okay at best, I'm going to say. So yeah, not too keen on that. And also, I'm not entirely sure that a glass mount antenna up here would be any better than the longer mount just there. It's still going to be right up against this bit of metalwork here. So I'm not sure it actually solves that. Someone else also mentioned about the spare wheel well being a pond. I've not experienced that with this car so far, but it is something I'm definitely keeping an eye on. Now, I'm getting a little bit of water ingress just around that latch of the boot, but keep my eye on it, it'll be fine. And I've also washed it as well. The car has been washed, so it's not looking too shabby at the moment. So there we have it, an update on what I've done with the vehicle, the radio installed in my car. What do you think I still need to do? What would you have done? What wouldn't you have done? Let me know down in the comments down below, because I do want to hear it. I am taking on board what you say, and definitely trying to make this a really nice install, and making it fit for use. If you've liked this video, there's a button specifically for that. If you haven't, there's another one that seems to work just fine too. If you haven't already done so, please do click on that subscribe button, and also click that notification bell and be told whenever I upload a new video. There's another video coming up over here that I think that you will like next. Until next time, jump through. Bye bye.